This is a podcast from Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Regional Adoption Service. In this episode, we explore therapeutic parenting, what it is, why it's recommended for all adoptive families, and what it can look like in everyday life.
Therapeutic parenting is a specialised approach to parenting that we would encourage all of our adopters to use. So it focuses on meeting the unique needs of children that have experienced trauma, neglect and have attachment issues.
You'll hear practical strategies you can try straight away, from emotional availability and predictability to what repair sounds like when things go wrong.
We're really trying to understand what is the need underneath. If it's bedtime routine, is it because do we need to think about attachment? Are they going to feel abandoned? Are they going to not know if you're going to be ever back because of their previous experiences?
So whether you're just starting out or already further along your adoption journey, we hope this conversation helps you feel more informed, reassured and supported as you take the next steps.
Hello and welcome to the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Adoption Podcast. With me are Viv Ballinger, a social worker, Chris Clipston, one of the team managers, and Jean Gonachot, a specialist clinician who supports families while children are still looked after by the local authority before the adoption order is made. So, welcome to our guests.
Good morning. Morning.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So, let's get into it then. From the moment of that first inquiry, the first call, Viv, how would you explain therapeutic parenting in very simple terms?
Okay, Freddie. Yeah, it's quite difficult. It's quite a complex thing to be thinking about. But I suppose therapeutic parenting is a specialised approach to parenting that we would encourage all of our adopters to use. So it focuses on meeting the unique needs of children that have experienced trauma, neglect and have attachment issues. So we recognise that traditional parenting approaches may not be effective for children who've had these experiences. So we would encourage people to use these approaches. I suppose one of the key aspects of therapeutic parenting is it focuses on having empathy and understanding and validating the child's emotions and experiences crucial to kind of building trust and fostering secure attachments. So we really think that it can help to kind of build those connections in the early days and help to kind of build structure and boundaries.
How might therapeutic parenting perhaps differ slightly from how we'd been parented as children?
I think for me is thinking another maybe term for it is relational parenting, because we want to emphasize that the relationship is the important bit of the parenting. For me personally, the way I grew up with my mum, being single mum, was the relationship was not the primary aspect, it was obedience. And so if you were not obedient, you were not being a good child. There was no room for discussions. It was very much, why are we doing this? Because I said so. So in that way, when we think about more traditional parenting, it might be more focused on the behaviours, while the therapeutic parenting is more focused on the underlying needs. There are needs that need to be met and are not being met, and that's why we're seeing behaviours come up.
So it perhaps would be useful at this point to talk about an example of where we would see therapeutic parenting being effective in those early weeks. So what might be one sign of success be?
I think just being able to sit alongside your child for whatever is going on for them, and rather than thinking about where the behaviours come from, or is this because of their stages of development or because they're adopted, just parenting the child that is in front of you, sitting alongside them, helping them to recover when they've had a moment of stress or have become dysregulated, and providing them with empathy and listening to what is going on for them and helping them to find the words. Often our children don't have the words for how they're feeling. So part of therapeutic parenting is to help them to verbalise what is going on for them and how they are feeling. Early days, if you can do that, what we generally see is children starting to be able to recognise and name what is happening for them. And they won't be able to do that all of the time straight away, because therapeutic parenting is a long-term project. It's not something that happens overnight. But those small times when they are able to recognise how they're feeling is just a sign that things are moving in the right direction.
So is therapeutic parenting used all the time, or is it just to fix certain situations that might come up during the parenting journey?
All the time. So we would ask our families to use therapeutic parenting all of the time. And there are various models about, how you do that, how you are more nurturing, how you are meeting the children's needs, how you do that in a playful way. But absolutely, it is a style of parenting that we would recommend continues throughout. And although, we're here today talking about adoption and using therapeutic parenting with adopters, it's a style of parenting that many families use, not just for children who have experienced trauma. So the more traditional parenting methods, probably, we would see less of now, and general families are using a therapeutic approach. But it's certainly more crucial for our children who've experienced trauma.
And why is this approach particularly recommended for adopters?
I suppose particularly for adopters, I think it's about helping them to form those connections with children, understanding where those behaviours will be coming from, helping children to work through the trauma that they've experienced. It can help build the trust in that relationship. It makes children feel safe, secure. They know where they stand. They know what the expectations are. So it's rather than kind of dealing with the kind of like a behavioural model, if you like, you're not actually understanding what's beneath that behaviour and where it's coming from, whereas therapeutic parenting, you're starting to unpick that and helping children to understand that for themselves, helping them to understand their own emotions and why they may be feeling a certain way and then why they might be behaving in a certain way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also really like what you said, Chris, about a style. It's when we think about changes, it's more of a lifestyle change, isn't it? It's a journey, and it's important during that journey to recognize we're going to make mistakes, and that's going to be all right. And this compassion that you described so well with the children, to have that same compassion for yourself is part of the journey, isn't it? And yes, I agree. I think, as you said, there are different approaches. The one that I'm more familiar with talks about the concept of mistrust, and that children who may have had adverse childhood experiences and then lots of grief and loss and disruption, they might not really trust easily adults because of their experiences. And so the therapeutic parenting is really working on them feeling like they can actually trust you as a parent. And it does take time, but as you said, there are those small moments where you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that. So that's really the goal, that they can trust you. So then they can open up and make sense of what's going on together. They don't have to be alone.
So we're hearing some really good examples of the benefits and the value of therapeutic parenting. But for people who are at an earlier point in their adoption journey, could you just give us one example of something that therapeutic parenting is that you might not see in a traditional parenting environment?
So one example that comes to mind is, I guess, in a more traditional parenting style, when a child has done something that you're not happy with, they've misbehaved in some way, you might talk about using time out and asking that child to go and sit away from you for a certain amount of time, maybe something to look at so that they can monitor the time. With a therapeutic approach, we would talk about using time in as opposed to time out. So yes, there needs to be a break in whatever the behaviour is, and they need to perhaps have some time to calm their emotions down and to think about what's happened. But we would ask that you do that with them, so they sit beside you. You might have to offer them comfort with just a hand on their leg or on their shoulder. It might be that they're not ready to accept that level of comfort. But rather than them feeling a sense of rejection by being sent away, they remain alongside you for a period of time where they're able to calm down and you're at a point where you can help them regulate, you can repair the situation and then move on.
So we've talked a bit about regulation there, which I think is a really interesting point. It's also about kind of how the parents deal with their own emotions, isn't it? And the importance, I guess, of being emotionally available to their children.
Yeah, definitely. So I think children learn from watching the adults around them, and that goes for their behaviours as well, and their emotions. And it can be really difficult if you are being challenged or there's a challenging situation, but the children are still very, particularly children who are placed with the doctors, they're often on high alert, looking for what is going on, what is the response going to be to a situation. So if you are able to remain calm and emotionally available to them in a stressful situation, they start to learn that that's, a good model of dealing with difficult times. It's not easy. And what I would say is that there's, there are times when you just can't do that, and that's okay. We don't get it right all the time. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And it's allow yourself to get it wrong sometimes, but to do that repair. So again, to model. So, to say that actually I didn't handle that very well, I'll think about how we do that differently next time.
Yes, a bit of a review as to how things went and how you dealt with yourself in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, the one thing I really enjoyed the time in, and I was thinking about repair, isn't it? If one thing you want to try is repair, because we're not perfect, we're going to mess up, and sometimes we're going to be really upset. But it's taking responsibility for that relationship to realize, hey, you know what? I noticed, I don't know, we went to the grocery store and it was so hard for you to leave the grocery store. I think next time I really need to think about how I can help you better with that. So you're taking on the responsibility. It's not just on the child. And that's the repair of like, you know what? I was so forceful. I don't think I handled the situation really well back in the grocery store. I'm so sorry. So that's what repair looks like. You take responsibility and you apologize for maybe not being curious with them, not being emotionally available. Or maybe, you know what, I snapped at you. I was so stressed out that time. I'm so sorry, because I know snapping is not kind or it's very stressful. So I'm very sorry. Just, apologizing for whenever we missed the opportunity to be emotionally available with them.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground discussing the rationale for therapeutic parenting and why it's very important for adopters to learn about it. But let's make things a bit more practical now, shall we, and discuss the things that you could try tonight or tomorrow. Let's go to you, Jehan, once again, and just give us one way to bring more predictability into tricky moments. Let's talk about bedtime, for example.
Yeah, bedtime or getting to school, these are always the difficult times. I think they are very tricky because everyone is tired at bedtime. And I know for myself, when I'm tired, I have zero patience. And I notice my voice, my tone of voice raising and rising and things like that. So, and that's something that children, young people will pick up instantly on, even just a tension in your body. But predictability helps usually settle your nervous system because there is a routine. You know what's going to happen, and you know after this we're going to do that, and after that we're going to do this, and it really helps. So for me, the best is obviously you might have your own idea, but if you feel like it's not working too well, you can, depending on the child, really be thinking with the child about like, this is a little bit tricky. So what do you think we should be doing? And it's really thinking about what relaxation looks like for the child, how a child goes to sleep, how did they used to go to sleep, what was helpful for them, unhelpful. Some people need to listen to things, like my wife listens to things to go to sleep. For me, I can't. I have to read something, but boring, otherwise I'm too excited. So really being curious about the child, what is it that they resonate with, that is meaningful. And they might not know, so that's a great opportunity to be like, all right, let's figure it out together.
Yeah, and validation of the feeling there. Viv, why is it important to validate your child's feelings but also still hold a boundary?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important if you can do that. I think obviously it's about recognising that in that moment the child is feeling a specific way and having acceptance for that feeling. So you're not trying to correct them. So it may be that they're feeling particularly frustrated, and that's presenting in, that they're really cross about something, and then they may have done something as a consequence to them feeling frustrated or cross. So it's holding that and saying to them, I know that you're feeling really frustrated or you're really annoyed about this, and that's why you then threw something or you may have hit somebody. So you're validating that feeling, but then you're saying, but it's not okay to do that behaviour. So you're separating it out. So you're still... your love for them, how you feel about them isn't changing because of the behaviour that they've done, but you're acknowledging that they are feeling a particular way. So it's also helping children to understand their emotions, because that's something that they haven't had previously, usually.
Yeah, and Chris, actually, predictability is an important part of this as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So having structure and boundaries is what helps children to feel safe. And to know that, what they expect to happen that day is what is going to happen that day. Now, we all know that there are things that happen that means that there has to be changes in routines. And that can be difficult for our children. But helping them, preparing them for those changes can help them through that. But generally, even, we have children who move into a completely new home. They don't know the home. They don't know the environment. So doing things regularly the same way. So if you go to the park, walk to the park the same way every time. So it can be boring for you as an adult, but actually it's building up that understanding in the child that when we say we're going to the park, I know where we're going and we are going to go to the park. And I know what happens when we end up, and I know that I'm coming home, to get them used to the fact that their new home is their home. So those types of things are really important, and having structure in the day so they know, particularly food is an issue sometimes for our children. So when they know when breakfast is, they know when lunch is, they know when snack time is, they know where the snacks are, they know who's going to get that for them, they know that you're going to meet that need if they're feeling hungry. Bedtimes, as Jehan says, can be a sort of tricky time. But if you have established a routine and they know what's coming, they know what they do next, it just helps them to feel safe. So it's really important. I mean, we talk on training all the time about having structure and boundaries in the day for the children, because it gives them that sense of predictability. They know what's going to happen. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about whether they're going to get fed or whether they've got, a pillow in their bed. It's all stuff that makes them feel safe and secure.
So it's clear that the therapeutic parenting approach is vital all the time, not just at the beginning. But of course, there will be times when parents do need more help, and that could happen at any point. And this is where Jehan's team comes in. So Jehan, just briefly describe how you see your role in supporting adoptive families.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it can be a little bit tricky because we have almost this time-limited period where before the adoption order is granted. So the way it really depends on each family, doesn't it? It depends on how the child is arriving into the family system. It depends on the other family system. So sometimes it's been more with getting a better understanding of the child's needs, about how those needs look like and how do we meet those needs. And sometimes it's more about the impact of the arrival of the child on other family members and how do we help those other family members. Because obviously everyone gets impacted in some ways when there is a new person in the family.
So how do you help? What do you do when you come in and assess a situation like that you've just described? What are the specific actions that you undertake?
I think we're trying to get into, depending on what the issue is, we're really trying to understand what is the need underneath. If it's bedtime routine, is it because around do we need to think about attachment? Are they going to feel abandoned? Are they going to not know if you're going to be ever back because of their previous experiences? So we're really trying to be curious about what is it. So we see something at the surface and we're really trying to go down below. And it's so helpful to have the parents because they are the experts in the child, or they're becoming the experts. So I usually bring ideas about, what do you think about this idea or that idea or this idea? And then they tell me which idea fits with them. And when it's more about the family, it's looking at interactions within the family and meaning that's been made within the family about those interactions. Like if there is sibling rivalry, the meaning they are making is, oh, I'm not going to be a good sibling. And do we have other stories where there are times they are really good siblings? And do we need to maybe reinforce those stories and being curious about, hey, you did so well just now. What happened? Tell me, help me understand. So that they can be like, yeah, you know what, I am a good sibling.
But Chris, if a family listening to this feels like they're struggling at the moment, what would you say is the first step towards getting help?
So, depending on where they are in their adoption journey, they will have hopefully still have contact with a social worker, and that will either be the adoption social worker who did their assessment and did the initial placement with the child, or through our adoption support service. And if people are needing support, they can contact either of those and we will send them in the right direction. But equally as important are the support networks around them, so their extended family and friends who are there to give them emotional support and practical support. And often it's that they are just on the end of a phone. And it might be that they don't want to talk about what's gone on in their day, but they just want to talk about the next episode of EastEnders or whatever, but it's a release for them. So family and friends is a really good area of support, as is social workers and the adoption support service. But if it's something that they feel needs to be a little bit more intensive, or they're really, really struggling, then I would always ask people to reach out to us. As part of our preparing families for adoption, we do what we call friends and family training. So we've already had a discussion with their network about where the struggles might be, where they might need that additional support. And we can work with them to think about, is there somebody already in their network that can help, or is it that we need a bit more specialist intervention and where we might approach Jehan's team or look elsewhere?
You're touching on the importance of the wider network, because I know we've been talking a lot about the support from the adoption team, but to be a parent, to be an adopted parent successfully, you need to have a network, you need to have support out there, be that friends and family, but it's a network that can change over time.
Yeah, that's right, and often does. So we do, as part of an adoption assessment, we look at people's network and their extended family, and they think about who it is that is going to be there in an emergency, who can give practical support, who can give emotional support. But often that changes, and I think that's true of every parent. Once you start engaging with other parents, you start to make friends elsewhere. We have adoption support groups, so I think it's really important to link with other adopters as well, because some of the difficulties they might be experiencing can be quite unique to the world of adoption. So having other adopters out there is also really important to link in with.
But also not to try and struggle on your own, to reach out early. In fact, actually, Viv, why is reaching out early a really important thing for families to do?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, with the families that I support, I would encourage them, during my visits to talk about how things are going. If they are finding things challenging, difficult, what could we do to help them? Is it, like Chris says, is it that they need more of a specialist service? Is it that actually there's somebody in their family that could offer them a bit of time? So say, for example, if a parent is really struggling and they're feeling quite overwhelmed, is there somebody like a grandparent or a friend that could just be an extra pair of eyes, not somebody that's going to be caring for the children, but could actually offer that parent a bit of extra support. We would always say to people, come, and talk to us about things. We're there to help. We're there to support. we're not there to judge. Everybody is learning. It's a whole new experience for people.
And I think in those early days, particularly, when we talked earlier about the ability to reflect on the day, it's often people in your network that you do that reflection with. You might talk to your mum or your friend, or as Viv says, as the social worker will be visiting in the early days. So it's quite often that's a good way of practicing that reflectiveness and thinking about what's gone right and what's gone wrong in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually doing that with somebody else rather than just doing it in your own head.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because then you get stuck, don't you? Or you only come up with the same solutions. And I think sometimes being clear, and that takes maybe a little bit of vulnerability, but just to call someone and be like, this is what I need right now. I'm going to just vent, and I just need you to say, oh, yes, I get it. Or to say, you know what, I'm having a really tricky time. What I need is for you to help me think about what's going on. You can be very clear, and that way that way it's really helpful, rather than just picking up the phone and then you're done with the conversation, you're like, that did nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. And I think often, people feel that things are difficult, or that things aren't going the way they thought, or progress is slower than they anticipated. But actually, when you sit down and talk it through, there's lots of things that are really positive, and they can see that progress then because you've given them that opportunity.
And it's helpful, as you say, to have friends and family who will actually challenge your way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or bring other things that you had never thought about. Be like, oh yeah, you know what? Or they know you really well, to be like, you know what? I know you. And I know when this happens, that's really tricky for you. So that would have been really, really hard. And then you feel like, yes, we as adults, we need that type of therapeutic relational, thing. It's not just the children, young people. We all need that.
Let's jump into a few everyday situations that will come up for parents. We talked actually a moment ago about difficulties with bedtime falling apart, and what would you try first. Let's talk about Monday school refusal. So child doesn't want to go to school. What's the conversation? What's that first conversation that you would have?
I mean, I think you always start with wondering what is going on for the child. There's a reason why they don't want to go to school, and it might not have anything to do with school. In fact, it's probably got nothing to do with school at all. There's something that might have happened earlier on in the day, or a dream that they've had. So that curiosity, I think, is really important as a first stage. And we talk about using the phrase, I wonder how you're feeling. I wonder if that's making you sad. Those types of things, to try and help a child express what is going on for them in that moment. The other element that I think is a good strategy to use is to allow the child to have some control, because often, particularly I think early in placement, they feel like they have no control over anything that's going on. Things are being done to them by adults. So introduce an element of control for them. So don't mention the fact that they don't want to go to school, but to say things like, shall we go to school in the car today, or shall we walk? So, the outcome is that they've gone to school, but they've had an element of control about how they've got there. So I think those are the sort of key elements, making sure that you're curious about what is going on for them and allowing them to have some control over the situation, whilst you have the boundaries that's keeping them safe and doing what needs to be done that day.
Food battles and control. What helps keep the connection whilst also protecting the value of meal times?
I think where possible, it's important to provide meals and food that children, they enjoy. It might not be the foods that you would be liking to eat, but I think it's important that they have those familiar things that they've liked before. Thinking about what your expectations are, so are you okay if they get up and get down from the table? Making sure that you're clear about when meal times are going to happen. Thinking about helping them to understand when they might be full, because often children have a need and then they will want to eat because of that need, so it's helping them to recognise that perhaps they have had enough, so managing that for them. I think it's just thinking about the structure of the meal times and what things you're happy to kind of let go, because it doesn't mean to say this is what it's going to be like forever.
What about a small lie about something that might not be terribly important? How would you recommend responding?
So I think we would always say, pick your battles. So if it's something that is insignificant, nobody is harmed, you know it's not 100% how you want things to be, but it doesn't matter, then let it go. There are enough things that happen throughout the day that you do feel you need to intervene. That it's definitely about let the small things go for now, decide what are the important things, and they're the things that you need to be tackling.
Absolutely. And as you notice, if it's more than once, if it's a pattern, you can start being curious about how come they are doing this. And then you can be curious about, sometimes you're telling me things and I wonder, like, do I agree with that story or is there another story? And I just wonder how, what's going on for you that you might not be telling me the other story, or however you want, because sometimes saying lying or truth can be quite shaming for the children. But just being curious about, like, hey, is this a moment? You remember when I talked to you about those different stories that people might be telling? Like, is this a moment like that? And just notice, so you're kind of planting those seeds so you can eventually revisit. And over time, when trust has been built a little bit more, then maybe they will open up to let you know what's actually going on. Yeah.
And actually, tone of voice is very important when you're asking a question like this. So just listening to the way that you sort of acted out that question, because it could be, I suppose it could come across as quite accusatory if you're suggesting that somebody is saying a mistruth or a lie. So actually, it's the way the question comes across as well.
Absolutely. It's the words that you're using. Some children cannot hear the word no, so you have to find a different way to say that. Yes and, or, it's going to be late, or with yes with a condition. But the tone of voice, it's all the non-verbals where I think, Chris, you said they're like kind of hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant at times. And they're going to pick up on your tone of voice, your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions that you might not even be aware. You might be like, hey, this is great, but you really tense as you're saying this, and they're going to know you don't mean it. So it is really, really tricky. But that's a good opportunity for, I guess, self-reflection, self-awareness, and then repair if you notice that there is a incongruency.
And finally, siblings clashing, everyone's favourite subject. What would co-regulation look like in that moment?
So I think it is difficult when you have more than one child that you're managing in front of you at any one time. And it's important to remember that children, adopted siblings, may have been in a home where they were experiencing the same trauma, but their perception of that and how they feel about that can be very different. So it's really important not to try to put them in a pot, if you like, and treat them both the same. If there is a situation happening and you've got conflict between siblings, the most important thing is to make sure that everybody's safe. And distract, maybe intervene physically if you need to, allow for a bit of time maybe to pass, and then think about repairing and perhaps modelling a different way of that relationship playing out. And we talk about asking children to put themselves in the other person's shoes, and what did it feel like for them? How do you think that made them feel? And vice versa, doing that with the siblings, just to help them to think about how they can repair that relationship and to model, a connected relationship with each of them. So they're seeing that is how, being together and working things through together is a good way of managing conflict rather than throwing a punch at somebody.
Yeah, and so actually to instill empathy in the child at quite a young age, because we're saying that the parents need to be empathetic, but actually the children need to have a greater awareness and understanding of their own impact in the family, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That everybody's relationship is equal, and we should all be showing empathy for each and curiosity about each other. And it's not going to go well all of the time, but it can be repaired. And
to comment on that, you mentioned the how would you feel? Let's say it's Chris and Jean that are fighting together. Be like, Chris, what do you think? How do you think Jean was feeling in that moment? And so, Chris will say, I don't know,
I was really cross with you.
There we go. But then you can ask the other one to be like, did you realize that's how they were actually feeling? Because sometimes we have an idea about how the other is feeling and we're completely wrong about they didn't care about me. Actually, they did care about you. And how is it for you to hear that Chris was thinking that about you? So it's a little bit of a maybe more complex conversation, but it helps about, how would the other one feeling? And then do you realize that's how they are actually feeling? So you can check your hypothesis about how other people are feeling. I don't know. Does it make sense? It's just to add an extra element to that. But it can be really, really tricky, I think, especially when they both want you're alone, and they both want you at the same time. It reminds me of, when people have twins, and then it's like ours all at once, and you have to try and soothe both of the babies. That's sometimes what needs to happen when you have both of them really dysregulated, and you're trying to soothe both of them. So, as we said, I think it's going back to the support network around you, because with siblings, it's definitely needed.
And finally, for now, we all know it's hard to be a good parent when you're running on empty yourself. So let's just touch on the importance of self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that you look after yourself, that you take time to do the things that you find are relaxing. Because if you're not in a good place, then it's really hard to offer that therapeutic approach to children.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard because there is what I hear usually, I have no time. So sometimes it's just treating yourself. Today I'm going to wear this beautiful scarf that I got and I still haven't worn, or I'm going to have a really nice coffee, and it's thinking about energy, when you're depleted and tired. Working out can be great, can give you energy, but sometimes you need to just hang out with a really good friend and you're going to be tired the next day, but it recharges you in a different way.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that we are very aware of, particularly in early placement, is that sleep deprivation is massive for people. So getting that support network in to help you so that you can rest and relax is really important.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation on today's programme, exploring the value and the benefits of therapeutic parenting and why it's recommended for all adopters. Thank you very much indeed to our guests, Viv, Chris and Jehan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you're just starting out, remember, you don't have to get this perfect. Staying curious, staying connected and repairing when things wobble all make a big difference. For training and support, speak to your social worker or visit the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough adoption website. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
We've heard how therapeutic parenting is less about perfection and more about connection, using predictability, empathy, and calm boundaries to help children feel safe. If you're exploring adoption, remember, small, consistent steps really do add up, and support is there when you need it. Thanks for joining us on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Regional Adoption Service podcast, here to inform, encourage, and walk alongside you on your adoption journey.